My new hire refused to do entry-level work, scoffing, "I deserve a senior position, not this boring stuff." When I told him he had to prove himself first, he snapped, "Then I'll just go straight to the CEO and demand a promotion." Hours later, he returned, face red, and muttered, "I've been demoted to intern." I smiled. "Guess you should have read the employee handbook first." I run a mid-sized software company in San Francisco. We're not some startup with beanbags and kombucha on tap. We're old school in how we do things, but with modern code and structure. We build enterprise software for logistics companies, and it's not glamorous, but it pays well and the team is solid. Our culture is simple. No matter who you are or where you come from, you start at the bottom. Everyone, yes, everyone, starts with the same basic entry-level work. You learn the systems, the workflows, and the weird little quirks of the platform. After that, if you prove yourself, we move you up. Fast, if you're good. But there's no shortcut. You don't walk in and skip the queue because of some shiny resume. A few months ago, we needed a junior developer. Nothing crazy, just someone to handle bug tickets, assist with QA cycles, write cleanup scripts, and handle integration testing. The job posting was clear. Junior. Ground level. Learn first. Grow fast position. We ended up hiring this guy. Let's call him Darren. Darren looked great on paper. Ivy League degree, a couple of internships at big tech firms, a handful of personal projects on GitHub. He was confident in interviews, a little too confident maybe, but he answered our tech questions well and said he liked solving hard problems. We figured he'd do well with time. One of our junior engineers had moved to a different city, so the spot opened up fast and Darren was slotted in. Day one, I introduced him to the team and walked him through the onboarding docs. Our HR system, Git repo, staging environments, the normal stuff. Then I handed him a few basic tasks, writing some tests, fixing minor UI issues, documenting a data pipeline. He didn't even try to hide the look on his face. He glanced at the ticket list, scrolled through it with visible disgust, and then stared at me. "This is beneath me," he said, like he couldn't believe what I'd just asked him to do. I thought I was being hired to actually develop things. "You are," I said. "But first, you need to understand how we do things here. That means starting small, like everyone else." He laughed. Like, actually laughed. Then he said, "I didn't spend years in school to fix typos in documentation and write unit tests." I raised an eyebrow. "That's how it works here. You start with basic tasks, learn the system, and then we move you to bigger projects once you show you understand it." Then he hit me with it. "I think I'll just go talk to the CEO and get this cleared up. I was hired to contribute at a senior level, not do this intern stuff." Now, what Darren didn't know, and this is where things got interesting, is that I'm not just a senior developer or team lead. I'm the founder and CEO of the company. I dress like the rest of the devs, t-shirt, jeans, messy hair, but I've been running this place since I built the first prototype in my garage 10 years ago. I just don't make a big deal about my title. I like keeping things low-key. So when he said that, I waited a beat and then said, "You already have. I'm the CEO." He stared at me, like his brain couldn't process it. What? "I'm the CEO. And also the one who wrote the employee handbook you were supposed to read before signing your offer letter." He just stood there, face turning a very specific shade of red. I could see the panic starting to set in. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "you can either get started with the onboarding tasks like everyone else or we can rethink your position here." He didn't say anything. Just nodded stiffly and walked away. I figured that was the end of it. Maybe a wake-up call. Maybe he'd come back the next day with a different attitude. Maybe not. I was wrong. About part of it. An hour later, HR pinged me. Apparently, Darren had walked straight into their office and demanded that they reassign him. Said he was promised a senior role and that doing menial tasks was wasting his potential. He even asked them to set up a one-on-one with the CEO so he could explain his value. They told him, again, that I was the CEO. He refused to believe it. Thought they were messing with him. Got visibly agitated. Demanded they check again. Even pulled out his phone and started showing them LinkedIn screenshots of people he thought were the CEO based on Google results. None of them were me. At this point, HR was annoyed and called me in. When I walked into the room, he looked like he'd been hit by a truck. The red face was back. Eyes wide. He finally believed it. "I didn't know," he started, but I cut him off. "You didn't care," I said. "That's the problem." Then I did something I rarely do. I opened the employee handbook, turned to a page about misrepresentation during onboarding and refusal to follow assigned tasks, and read it out loud. It stated that in such cases, the company reserved the right to reclassify the position or terminate the contract within the 90-day probation period. He sat there silently, trying not to explode or cry. Maybe both. So, I said, "You've got two options. You can continue here, but not as a junior developer. Not anymore." Starting tomorrow, you're reclassified as an intern. If you want to work your way up from there, we'll give you the chance. But there won't be another one. He opened his mouth, closed it again, and then nodded. Okay, he mumbled. Okay, I repeated. Guess you should have read the handbook. That was 3 months ago. And I'll tell you something, he took the demotion. Quietly. Showed up the next day. Started doing the grunt work. No complaints. No more big speeches. Something in him broke, and honestly, that was probably the best thing for him. Now, here's where things get interesting, because it didn't end there. 3 weeks after Darren started as an intern, something shifted. At first, I thought he was just humbled. He showed up early, stayed late, and did everything asked of him without attitude. He fixed broken CSS. He organized file structures. He even volunteered to help QA testers during a nasty regression cycle that nobody wanted to touch. The team started warming up to him again. Some even felt bad, said maybe I'd come down too hard on him. I wasn't so sure. One afternoon, while reviewing our Git activity, I noticed something odd. A few commits had gone into a branch that wasn't approved yet. The branch belonged to one of our senior engineers, Rima, who was on PTO. The commits were small, but they tweaked some critical validation logic, stuff that directly impacted our live deployments. I looked into it deeper. It was Darren. He had forked her branch and pushed to it under her name. I checked the metadata. He'd been logging in through her credentials. That's when the red flags went off. I called IT. Had them pull logs. Sure enough, we found multiple login attempts under other team members' accounts. Most were failed attempts, but Rima? She'd made the rookie mistake of using a weak password, and Darren had gotten in. He hadn't just pushed code. He'd been reading her messages, digging through her work history, even opening her HR profile. That night, I stayed at the office late. I wasn't angry. I was something colder. Focused. I wanted to see just how far this went. I found more. Darren had been quietly building a clone of one of our internal tools, something we used for client onboarding. It wasn't public-facing, but it was proprietary. The code he copied wasn't perfect, but it was enough. He'd uploaded chunks to a private GitHub repo, and he'd been emailing back and forth with a recruiter from another company, a competitor. He wasn't just trying to prove himself. He was trying to steal from us. I documented everything. Logs, emails, commits, screen recordings. I called legal the next morning. Before I made any moves, I watched him walk into the office like nothing was wrong. Coffee in hand, hoodie zipped up, earbuds in. He smiled at a few team members and nodded at me like we were coworkers. Like he hadn't crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I waited until lunch. Then I pulled him into the same HR room where we'd had our last chat. I closed the door behind us. He sat down, looking smug again. Like he thought the intern gig was temporary and he was finally on his way out of it. Something wrong? He asked, smiling. You tell me, I said, sliding a printed screenshot across the table. It was one of his commits under Rima's name. He stared at it, blinked, said nothing. IT logs show you logged in using her account, I continued. You also cloned internal tools. You've been sending them to a recruiter. Sound familiar? He opened his mouth, then shut it. His face went pale again, but this time, he didn't even try to deny it. I laid out everything. Slowly, clearly. No emotion in my voice. This is theft. This is fraud. This is a breach of trust. I didn't mean, he started. You meant to get ahead, I interrupted. No matter who you stepped on. Then he snapped. I'm better than everyone here, he shouted. I just wanted to prove it. You think I was gonna wait 2 years to be taken seriously? You're all so slow, so safe. You don't see talent when it's right in front of you. He leaned forward, pointing at the screenshots. That system? I could rebuild it in a week. Your processes? Outdated. Your whole company? Stagnant. I was doing you a favor. I stared at him for a second. Then I leaned back and smiled. Coldly. You're right about one thing, I said. You're fast, but you're also reckless, arrogant, and now done. He stood up suddenly, knocking his chair over. You can't prove I meant to leak anything. Actually, I said, sliding another piece of paper across the table, I can. It was an email from his Gmail account to the recruiter, with an attachment and a message that said, take a look, this is how we do it on the inside. Imagine what I could do if I built this from scratch with your stack. He read it. Hands shaking. Security escorted him out within 10 minutes. His badge was deactivated. His accounts locked. His desk cleared. But it wasn't over. That's where things got messy. Because Darren? Darren didn't just go away quietly. The day after Darren got walked out, we tried to move on. The office was tense. Word had spread fast, developers talk. Nobody knew the full story, but people could piece together enough. A lot of the team assumed he'd just quit or mouthed off again and got canned. No one suspected just how deep he'd gone. But I did. And I had this gut feeling it wasn't over. 2 days later, it started. One of our legacy clients, an old, high-value logistics firm in Seattle, called in a panic. Their onboarding portal had glitched, wiping out newly uploaded client profiles. At first, we thought it was an internal bug. But we checked our deployment logs and nothing had been pushed to prod. No outages. No errors on our side. Then another client called. Then 2 more. Someone was targeting our systems. We dug deeper. Our servers were stable. Our backups intact. But the issue was happening on the client side. And only on versions of our onboarding tool that were several months old, versions that had been replaced internally but were still hosted on some older client servers. That's when I remembered Darren's repo. I called in the IT security lead. We got a warrant to access his devices, thanks to the legal documentation we already had. We worked with a forensic firm. What we found was even worse than I'd guessed. He hadn't just cloned our tool. He'd embedded code into it. Obfuscated scripts. Subtle, nothing that would raise alarms at first glance. But the payloads would activate under certain triggers, on user inactivity, or when the browser hit specific screen sizes, or when the session lasted more than 10 minutes. It wasn't destructive. Not directly. It was just disruptive. Random data wipes. Timeout loops. Form corruption. Enough to make it look like our software was unreliable. And it only affected clients who hadn't upgraded to our newest deployment. Clients who used older versions we'd phased out. Clients who, for some reason, had recently been contacted by a new up-and-coming dev shop, offering to rebuild their onboarding portals for cheap. A dev shop with no real online presence, a generic Squarespace site, and a contact email that routed to a Gmail address using a fake name. We traced the IPs. Darren. He'd weaponized the outdated version of our own tool against our clients, then used the chaos to pitch himself as the solution. It was bold. It was insane. It was almost smart. We contacted our legal team. They got the FBI involved, yes, the actual FBI. This was now software tampering, client interference, and potentially interstate wire fraud. But even as we worked on the legal angle, I had to protect the company, the brand. We called every client running outdated tools and forced emergency updates. Some were pissed. Some were scared. A few had already been talking to Darren's fake dev shop. One had even signed a non-binding letter of intent. I personally got on the phone with the execs at every one of those companies. I told them the truth. No spin. No PR. I said, "You've been targeted by a disgruntled former employee who is now under federal investigation. We've contained the breach. We're fixing everything. But you need to cut off communication with any dev firm not directly verified by us." Most of them understood. A couple were skeptical. One hung up on me. But within 48 hours, we'd locked everything down. Then came the second twist. While combing through the emails Darren had sent from his personal account, we found something strange, a forwarded message. Sent weeks earlier. From inside our company. Someone on our team had been feeding him info. Not just publicly available stuff, internal client notes, project timelines, old staging credentials. It wasn't just Darren. He had help. I was stunned. We're not a massive company, maybe 80 people total, about 45 of those in tech. I've personally hired most of them. So I launched a quiet internal audit. Only 4 people had access to the exact client info that had leaked. 2 were ruled out immediately. They were on PTO during the dates the emails were sent. The third? A dev named Kira, who'd only joined 6 months before Darren. She'd been quiet since he left. Low profile. Kept her head down. Good coder. Nothing flashy. But something felt off. I checked her Slack history. Nothing odd. Email? Clean. Then I had IT check her commit logs. And there it was. She'd helped Darren set up his fake dev environment. 2 months before his demotion. She'd forked an old test repo, cloned the onboarding tool, and made a series of edits that never got merged into main. And her commit comments were vague. Too vague. One literally said, "Fix stuff for D." We pulled her in. She denied everything. Said Darren must have stolen her credentials. Said he was charming, manipulative, and maybe he'd guessed her password. But the timestamps didn't lie. She'd committed changes after Darren was demoted. After he was locked out. And she'd done it from her own machine. We suspended her on the spot, escorted her out, turned over the data to the feds. 2 people. One tried to play the system. The other helped him burn it down. And for the first time in a decade of running this company, I started to wonder how much deeper the rot went. The fallout was immediate and ugly. Within hours of Kira being escorted out, Slack channels lit up. Rumors flew. People wanted answers. A few asked directly, "What the hell is going on?" So I called an all-hands meeting. I stood in front of 80 people who had trusted me to lead them. Some looked confused. Others looked afraid. A few looked like they already knew. "I owe you the truth," I started. Then I told them everything. About Darren. The stolen code. The sabotage. The fake dev firm. The internal breach. I didn't sanitize it. When I said, and someone in this room helped him, the room went dead silent. I explained how we found out, how we verified it, how Kira had been working with Darren even after he'd been demoted. I said legal was handling it, and the FBI was involved. Nobody moved. Then, from the back of the room, one of our senior engineers, Eli, stood up. "Can I say something?" he asked. I nodded. He turned to the team. "This isn't just about Darren or Kira. We've gotten sloppy. Some of us knew they were getting close, but we didn't say anything. We joked about it. Thought it was harmless. That's on us too." There were a few nods. A couple of people looked down. Then another voice. One of the junior devs. I remember Kira complaining a lot about how slow things moved. She said she felt invisible. Darren made her feel important. Someone else added, she always had Darren's back, even when he messed up. I thought it was loyalty. Guess it was something else. The conversation spiraled. People angry. People scared. People blaming each other for not seeing it sooner. Then came the major blow. A QA analyst named Raj stood up and said, "You know what hurts the most?" I liked Darren. Even after the demotion, I thought he was trying. I told him not to give up. That if he kept at it, he'd move up again. And he nodded like he believed me. All that time, he was playing us. He sat down hard, face pale. I couldn't even argue. He was right. The meeting ended with silence. No applause. No cheers. Just quiet, heavy air. People returned to their desks slowly, unsure of how to act. Later that afternoon, Rima, who'd just come back from PTO, came into my office. She'd been the one Darren impersonated. The one whose credentials he stole. She sat down across from me and asked, "Do you think we're okay?" I knew what she meant. Not the company. Us as people. I paused, then said, "We will be. But it'll take time." She nodded. "I feel stupid." "You're not," I said. "You trusted someone." "That's not stupid. That's human." She didn't answer. Just looked out the window. That night, I stayed late again. The office was quiet. Everyone had gone home except me and the janitor. I sat there, staring at the employee handbook Darren had refused to read. The irony was brutal. I thought about the trust we lost. The relationships fractured. The faith that was broken, not just in Darren or Kira, but in our system. In me. And I kept thinking, how did I miss it? For a company built on transparency, we'd been blind in all the wrong ways. A week later, we had a follow-up meeting. No speeches this time. Just open discussion. People vented. Some cried. Some said they felt betrayed by leadership. Others said they'd never seen a company confront something like this so directly. And then, slowly, things started to heal. We made changes. We strengthened security. Mandatory password resets. Revamped onboarding. Anonymous reporting tools. Team mentors. And we talked. Really talked. One-on-ones. Small group discussions. I made time for every single employee who wanted to speak. A few people left. Said the whole thing had shaken their confidence. I didn't blame them. But most stayed. I never saw Darren again. Last I heard, his fake dev firm got blacklisted and he was under federal investigation. Kira? Her LinkedIn went dark. Her number was disconnected. It didn't bring me joy. Just closure. Now, months later, I still think about it. Not every day, but enough. Enough to remember the lesson that hit hardest. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it walks in smiling, shaking your hand, asking for opportunity. And sometimes it sits right across from you, wearing the same badge you do. But here's what I know now. You can't stop people from breaking your trust. But you can decide how you rebuild from it. And I'm still here. We're still standing. And this time, we're paying attention.